Alexander Crane stood at the tall window of his library, staring at nothing. Outside, the garden stretched like a green ocean. Inside, silence wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. He owned 17 companies. He had houses in 5 countries. His watch cost more than most people earned in a year. But right now, at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, Alexander Crane was bored. "Sir, would you like fresh coffee?" He turned. Nia Brooks stood in the doorway, holding a silver tray. She was 24, maybe 25. Her uniform was crisp and clean. Her eyes were calm, like still water. She had worked in his mansion for 2 years, and Alexander realized he had never really looked at her before. She was just there, like the furniture. "No," he said. Then he noticed a chessboard on the table near the fireplace. An idea sparked his mind, a mean, twisted idea that made him smile. "Actually, Nia, do you play chess?" She paused. "A little, sir." "A little?" Alexander's smile grew wider. "Perfect. Play a game with me." "Sir, I have work to." "I'll pay you." He walked to the chessboard, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor. "Win, and I'll give you $5,000. Lose, and you work this weekend for free." Nia set down the tray carefully. Her face showed nothing, but something flickered in her eyes. "That doesn't seem fair, sir." "Life isn't fair." Alexander sat down, gesturing to the chair across from him like a king granting a favor. "What's wrong?" "Scared." For a long moment, Nia just looked at him. Alexander felt a strange prickle on his neck. Her gaze was steady, measuring, like she was reading words written on his forehead. Then she nodded once. "I'll play," she said quietly. Alexander laughed, a short, sharp bark of amusement. This would be fun. He'd crush her in 10 minutes, maybe 15 if he played slowly. Then he'd watch her work the weekend, and every time she cleaned a room, she'd remember, don't challenge people above you. Nia sat down. She folded her hands in her lap. "You're white," Alexander said, feeling generous. "You go first." Nia reached out and moved a pawn forward 2 squares. E4, the most common opening move in chess. Basic, predictable. Alexander grinned and moved his own pawn. E5, mirroring her move. Nia moved her knight. Alexander moved his knight to the exact same position, a mirror image. She moved her bishop. He copied her again. "Copying already?" Nia said softly. "Interesting strategy, sir." Alexander's grin faltered for just a second. There was something in her voice, not disrespect, but not fear either. It was calm, confident. "The best first move," Nia continued, moving another piece, "is the one your opponent underestimates." Alexander frowned. He studied the board more carefully now. Wait, if he kept copying her moves, she'd be controlling the game. She'd know what was coming because she would decide it. He stopped mirroring and made his own move, sliding his queen out aggressively. Nia didn't even blink. She moved a pawn, creating a small wall of protection for her king. They played in silence for a while. The only sounds were the soft click of pieces on wood and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Outside, birds sang. Inside, Alexander's smile had completely disappeared. This wasn't going the way he'd planned. Nia played like water flowing around rocks, smooth, patient, always finding the path forward. When Alexander attacked, she defended. When he defended, she quietly repositioned, setting up small traps he almost didn't see. "Almost. You're better than you said," Alexander muttered, capturing one of her pawns. "I said I played a little, sir." Nia moved her rook across the board. "I never said I played badly." Alexander felt heat rise in his chest. He leaned forward, studying the board like it was a puzzle that had suddenly become complicated. How was she doing this? She was a maid. She cleaned toilets and folded sheets. Where had she learned to play chess like this? He moved his bishop, thinking he'd trapped her queen. Nia moved her knight. Alexander blinked. His queen was now under attack from 2 pieces. He had to move it. But when he did, Nia's rook would slide into position and... No. He was losing control of the center of the board. Where'd you learn to play? He asked, trying to sound casual. His voice came out tight and annoyed. Nia looked up from the board. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Alexander saw something in them. Not anger, not triumph. Something deeper. Something that looked like memory. My father taught me, she said simply. He said chess isn't about the pieces, sir. It's about seeing patterns. In the game, in people, in life. Your father? He was a janitor at a community center. Nia moved her bishop, and Alexander's stomach dropped. His king was in danger. Not checkmate yet, but close. Too close. The center had a chess club. He'd watch the games while he cleaned. Eventually, they let him play. Then he started winning. Then he started teaching. Alexander stared at the board. His carefully built position was falling apart like a sand castle in the rain. He taught you all this? Every day after school, Nia said. Her voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. He said a mind is the only thing no one can take from you, the only power that's truly yours. Alexander moved his knight, trying to defend. His hand trembled slightly. Nia moved her queen. Check, she said quietly. The word hung in the air like thunder. Alexander's king was trapped. Not checkmated, not yet, but trapped, cornered, vulnerable. He looked up at Nia. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded again, her face calm. But her eyes were alive. They burned with something Alexander had never had to earn. Respect built on skill, on practice, on merit. You're just copying me, Alexander had said at the start, but he'd been wrong. Nia Brooks wasn't copying anyone. She was 10 moves ahead, and she'd been there from the very beginning. Alexander moved his king to safety. His fingers felt clumsy, like they belonged to someone else. Sweat gathered at the back of his neck, even though the library was cool. He'd played chess before, at business school, at country clubs, on lazy Sunday afternoons with other rich men who treated the game like a sport for gentlemen. He'd always won. Or maybe they'd always let him win. Nia studied the board like she was reading a story. Her eyes moved from piece to piece, seeing connections Alexander couldn't grasp. She moved her rook, gliding it across the board with a soft click. Your turn, sir, she said. Alexander gripped his bishop and moved it without thinking. Immediately, he knew it was a mistake. Nia's knight jumped forward, forking his queen and rook. He could save one, not both. Damn, Alexander whispered. He grabbed his queen and moved it to safety. Nia's bishop swooped in and took his rook clean off the board. She set the piece gently beside her, adding it to a small row of captured white pieces. Alexander's pieces. His army, shrinking with every move. You said your father was a janitor? Alexander asked. He was stalling, trying to think, trying to find a way back into the game. Where is he now? Nia's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. A shadow passing over the sun. He died 3 years ago, she said. Heart attack. He was cleaning the floors at the center when it happened, right next to the chess tables. I'm sorry, Alexander said. The words came out automatically. Hollow, he'd said, I'm sorry 1,000 times in his life. At funerals for people he barely knew. In business meetings when deals fell through. The words meant nothing. They were just sounds. But Nia nodded like she heard something real in them anyway. He used to say that every game tells you who a person really is. Nia continued. She moved a pawn forward, steady and sure. Aggressive players want control everything. Defensive players are afraid of losing what they have. Impatient players make mistakes. But the best players? They watch. They listen. They see the whole board, not just their own pieces. Alexander felt like she was talking about more than chess. He looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, she wasn't just a maid. She was a person who'd lost someone, who'd learned something precious and carried it like a treasure, who worked in his house, invisible, while he walked past her every day without seeing her at all. What kind of player am I? He asked. Nia tilted her head, considering. You play like someone who's never had to lose, sir. Like the world owes you victory. The words landed like a slap. Alexander's jaw tightened. And you, he shot back. What kind of player are you? Nia moved her queen, placing it in the center of the board like a general taking the high ground. I play like someone who knows that every piece matters, even pawns. Alexander captured one of her knights with his bishop, a small victory, but it felt good. He sat back, trying to regain some confidence. You're clever, I'll give you that. But clever isn't enough. You need power, resources, money. Do I? Nia moved a pawn, just a simple pawn, one square forward. It didn't look threatening. But Alexander saw it now, the trap forming like shadows in a forest. That pawn was 3 moves away from becoming a queen. My father told me something I never forgot, Nia said. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the whole room. He said, Nia, rich men think pawns are weak because they move slowly. But pawns are the only pieces that transform. Every pawn can become a queen. Remember that. Alexander stared at the board. His king was boxing by his own pieces. His queen was too far away to help. Nia's pawns were marching forward like soldiers, and behind them, her rooks and bishops waited like wolves. This is just a game, Alexander said. His voice came out defensive, sharp. It doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? Nia looked up at him. You invited me to play because you thought you'd win. You made a bet because you were certain I'd lose. You wanted to watch me fail. That's not just a game, sir. That's how you see the world. Alexander felt his face burn. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the words stuck in his throat like stones. She was right. He had wanted to humiliate her. He'd wanted the entertainment of watching someone beneath him struggle and fail. You think you know me? Alexander snapped. I know this. Nia moved her bishop, cutting off another escape route for his king. You have everything. Money, houses, power. But you're bored, empty. You invite a maid to play chess because you have nothing better to do, no one who challenges you, no one who's honest with you. That's not. Check, Nia said. Alexander's breath caught. His king was in danger again. He moved it frantically, running out of space, running out of options. My father cleaned floors for 30 years, Nia continued, her hands folded calmly in her lap. People walked past him like he was invisible, like I'm invisible to you. But he was brilliant, sir. He saw patterns everywhere, in how people walked, how they talked, how they treated others. He taught me that chess is just practice for life. Every move reveals character. Every choice shows who you really are. Alexander moved his queen desperately, trying to create a counterattack. But it was weak, scattered. Nia's pieces were everywhere now, a web tightening around his king. When I started working here, Nia said, I thought maybe rich people were different, happier, free. But you're trapped, sir, trapped by your own pride, your own assumptions. You never had a struggle, so you never learned to see. See what? Alexander's voice cracked. Nia moved her rook. That people are not pieces to be used, she said. That respect is not bought. That every person has something to teach you if you're humble enough to learn. Alexander looked at the board, really looked, and he saw it clearly now. The web, the trap, the inevitable end. Nia had been building this from the very first move. While he'd been playing to win the next exchange, she'd been playing to win the entire game. How many moves ahead do you see? He whispered. Nia smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, sad and gentle. As many as I need to, sir. She moved her queen into position. Check, she said again. This time, Alexander couldn't find an escape. Every square he could move to was controlled by one of Nia's pieces. His own army, what was left of it, blocked his path. He was surrounded, suffocated. I can't. Alexander stared at the board in disbelief. This isn't possible. It's already done, Nia said softly. It's been done for the last 6 moves. You just didn't see it. Alexander looked up at her. Nia Brooks, the woman who cleaned his house. The woman he'd barely noticed for 2 years. The woman who was about to beat him at chess, at strategy, at everything he thought he understood about the world. One more move, Nia said, and it's checkmate. The clock ticked. The library held its breath. And Alexander Crane realized he'd never felt so small. Alexander's hand hovered over his king. He could move it one last time, delay the inevitable for another turn, maybe two. But what was the point? The end was written on the board like words carved in stone. He looked at Nia. She sat perfectly still, waiting, not gloating, not smiling with victory, just waiting, like she had all the time in the world. "Make your move, sir," she said gently. Alexander moved his king. One square, the only square available. Nia reached out and moved her queen with the same careful precision she'd shown the entire game. The piece slid across the board and stopped, perfectly placed, cutting off every escape. "Checkmate," she said. The word hung in the air like the last note of a song. Final. Complete. True. Alexander stared at the board. His king stood alone, trapped by Nia's queen, her rook, her bishop, even her pawns. Those pieces he'd ignored, those weak pieces, had played their part. They controlled the squares, blocked the exits, transformed the board into a prison for his king. "I lost," Alexander whispered. He said it like he was testing the words, like they were in a foreign language. "I actually lost." "Yes, sir. To my maid." Nia's eyes hardened just a fraction. "To a person who plays chess, sir. That's all." Alexander leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked under his weight. He felt strange, hollow and full at the same time. Humiliated, yes, but also something else. Something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe ever. Respect. "You could have told me," he said. "When I challenged you, you could have warned me you were good. Would you have believed me?" Nia asked. Alexander thought about it. Honestly thought about it. And he knew the answer. No, I wouldn't have. Then what would have been the point? Silence filled the library again. Outside, the sun was lower now, painting the room in orange and gold. The chessboard sat between them, a battlefield where kings had fallen and pawns had risen. "Your father," Alexander said slowly. He sounded like he was a wise man. He was. Nia's voice softened. "He used to say that life is like chess. You start with the same pieces as everyone else. Kings, queens, pawns. But what matters isn't what you have. It's how you see, how you think, how you treat the pieces that seem small. Every pawn can become a queen," Alexander said, remembering her words. "Yes." Nia looked at the board, at one of her pawns that had marched all the way across and now sat crowned as a queen. But only if someone gives them the chance to move forward. Only if they're not kept in place, told they're not good enough, treated like they don't matter. Alexander felt something crack inside his chest, a wall he'd built without even knowing it. He thought about his life, the meetings where he talked and others listened, the decisions he made alone, the people who worked for him whose names he didn't know. He thought about Nia, cleaning his house for 2 years, invisible, while she carried this incredible mind, this beautiful skill, hidden like a treasure no one bothered to find. "I'm sorry," he said. And this time, the words meant something. They hurt coming out, but they were real. "I invited you to play as a joke. I wanted to humiliate you. I'm sorry." Nia studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Thank you, sir." "Don't call me that," Alexander said suddenly. The word felt wrong now. Distant, cold. "My name is Alexander." "Thank you, Alexander," Nia said. His name sounded strange in her voice. Human, equal. Alexander stood up and walked to the window. The gardens looked different now. Still beautiful, but somehow less impressive. What good was all this beauty if no one saw him? If he saw no one else? "I need to pay you," he said, turning back. "The bet. You won. $5,000. "I don't want it," Nia said quietly. "What?" Alexander blinked. "But that was the deal." "The deal was unfair from the start," Nia said. She stood up, smoothing her uniform. "You wanted to buy a moment of power over me. I don't want money that comes from that." "Then what do you want?" Alexander felt lost, like the board had been flipped and all the pieces scattered. Nia looked at him with those calm, steady eyes. "I want you to see people Alexander. Really see them. The woman who cooks your food. The man who gardens your roses. The driver who takes you to meetings. We're all here, living full lives, carrying dreams and talents and pain. Just like you. Alexander felt his throat tighten. I don't know how. Start small, Nia said. Learn names. Ask questions. Listen, really listen, to the answers. Play chess with people, not to beat them, but to understand them. She moved toward the door, ready to return to her work, to her invisible life. Wait, Alexander said. The word came out almost like a shout. Nia paused, turning back. Don't go. Please. I mean, don't leave the job. I want to offer you something different. Sir, Alexander, he corrected gently. I run 17 companies, Nia. Billions of dollars in decisions every year. And I just realized I've been playing chess with my eyes closed. I need someone who can see. Someone who thinks strategically. Someone who understands that people matter more than profits. Nia's eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying I need an advisor. A strategist. Someone to tell me the truth. Especially when I don't want to hear it. Alexander walked toward her, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble, but the sound seemed smaller now, less important. I'm saying that the best move I can make is recognizing talent, especially when it comes from places I wasn't looking. I clean houses, Alexander, Nia said softly. I don't have a business degree. You have something better, Alexander said. You have vision, strategy, and you're not afraid to tell a billionaire when he's wrong. He smiled, and it felt real warm, like sun on his face. That's worth more than any degree. Nia was quiet for a long moment. The clock ticked. The sun painted golden patterns on the floor. I want to finish my education, she said finally. Go to college. Learn business properly. I'll pay for it, Alexander said immediately. Full tuition. Any school you want. And you'll work with me part-time, learning the companies from the inside. Deal. Nia smiled. A real smile this time, bright and beautiful. Deal. They shook hands, not master and servant, not billionaire and maid. Just two people who played a game and found something true. 3 months later, Alexander stood in his boardroom. 20 executives sat around the table, powerful men and women who ran divisions and made millions. At the far end, in a chair that used to be empty, sat Nia Brooks. She wore a business suit now, her hair pulled back professionally. She had a notebook in front of her and a pen in her hand. The merger with Technologic Industries. Alexander said, Nia, what do you think? Every head turned. Some faces showed surprise. Others showed curiosity. Nia stood up calmly. I think it looks good on paper, she said. But I reviewed their employee satisfaction scores. High turnover. Low morale. If we merge, we inherit a cultural problem that will cost more than we gain. The room was silent. She's right, Alexander said. I checked after Nia flagged it. We're passing on this deal. He looked around the table. Anyone else have concerns they've been afraid to voice? Slowly, hands started to rise. Alexander smiled. The board was changing. The game was different now, because he'd finally learned the most important lesson. Every pawn could become a queen, but only if you give them room to move. In the library, the chessboard still sat on the table by the fireplace. The pieces were set up for a new game. Alexander and Nia played every Tuesday afternoon now. Sometimes he won. Usually she did. But winning wasn't the point anymore. The point was seeing. Really seeing. And both of them had learned that true power isn't about controlling the board. It's about respecting every piece on it. Checkmate isn't a conquest. It's an awakening. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you see the world a little differently, like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear that everyone has hidden gifts worth discovering. And subscribe to never miss stories that remind us true greatness comes from lifting others up, not keeping them down. Every person you meet is a move in life's greatest game. Play wisely.